What is happening, guys? Welcome to Test This Tech, and today we got a mic review. So we got this guy. This is the CAD E90. CAD E90. This is a dynamic microphone. It's USB and it's XLR. Now, this microphone, it used to be like $150, I think, but it is since then massively reduced in price. I believe on Amazon it's like $34.87. So obviously this is a microphone that they're not mass producing. Once these are gone from inventories, they're not making more of these. But I've seen some videos on YouTube from other audio YouTube creators or audio files, if you will. And they've had some interesting takes on this, and typically the takes have been the XLR portion. It actually sounds very good, and the USB, while sounds good, has a little bit of a ground loop issue. So I wanted to see if that was the case with this particular model, see how this would span in 2026. If we open up the box, big box actually, comes with a desk mount. Get some other stuff here, some manual and all that stuff, but we do get a windscreen, which is nice. And then the microphone in the box comes with the bracket that's good, that it's already attached to it to attach to a boom arm, which is really nice. So I don't have to take the desktop mount apart to put the one that I would put onto a boom arm. It's already put on there. So let's check out the mic and see how it looks. So one thing that attracted me about this mic is the form factor. I think it looks pretty cool, right? So, it's all metal, so definitely it's nice there. The grill is a pretty solid metal grill as well, so it's not like that plastic cheap metal grill at the end like some really cheap microphones would have that. We got a little knob here. The knob is plastic for the dial. A little wobbly, but it does have an indicator light, it seems like, and then we have a mute button as well. One interesting thing about this microphone that I haven't seen in others is that even in XLR, the mute actually works on this. So typically when it comes to XLR, unless you're hooking it up to a specific audio system where you can mute it, you can't mute the microphone directly. But this actually has a mute button and actually supposedly works in XLR mode. So we're going to test that. And then we have a Type-C out for the USB audio. So we're going to test both of those things, right? We're going to test the USB audio, see how that sounds, see if we hear that ground loop issue. Obviously the headphone out, see how that sounds. I don't know if the zero latency monitoring, if we could turn that off. It doesn't look like we can based off of what I'm seeing here, at least on the mic. You'll probably have to do that through your audio virtual system. But we're going to take a look at all that. One nice thing too, it does come with a 5/8 to 3/8 microphone adapter. So that's even better for the boom arm. So let's hook this guy up and let's see how it sounds via USB. All right, so we got the microphone here hooked up. This is via USB, USB-C. A couple things here that I realized is that it looks like there's no zero latency monitoring. So if you were looking forward to that, unfortunately, for this microphone, there's no zero latency monitoring. So my headphones plugged into here, I'll be able to hear whoever's on the other side that I'm doing a podcast with, but I can't hear myself. Some people actually don't like hearing themselves during zero latency monitoring, and then some others would like to have the option, to turn off the zero latency monitoring if they could. So fortunately for this one, no zero latency monitoring. And the gain itself does not, I thought it was going to control the headphone out, but it doesn't because there's no monitoring. So this controls the gain. Obviously, if you turn all the way down, so it's like a digital, I guess it's encoding digitally. But I think that might work XLR as well. I'll have to test that. And we have a mute button here. This mute button is not in the most convenient area, especially if you have headphones in and you're doing like a Zoom or some type of a podcast, virtually. You kind of have to go between these two to press the mute button. And we're unmuted. So this is the sound of the microphone without the windscreen. I'm going to put the windscreen on. See how it sounds here. I'll have to play this back to see if I'm hearing. I don't know if you guys are hearing any kind of ground loop or anything like that, some type of hissing noise. That was a lot of people mentioned that in the from prior reviews. So I'm going to mute to put this on, and then I'll unmute. Okay, so we're unmuted now. It's kind of weird. The microphone, the windscreen. It's kind of like it looks like it's shaped like it would be a condenser microphone, like front facing. So you're kind of getting this this styrofoam ball on top of it. So it's not the most attractive looking windscreen. Um, so for example, this is the F Deuce microphone. This is the one that's just via XLR. And you have the windscreen is shaped to be form fitting with the rest of the body of the mic, right? But the problem with this one is that there's not nearly as much protection or foam at the end of it to help with plosive rejection against plosives and whatnot. So plosives, don't know if plosives are hitting into this. And the only downside, as far as for the windscreen, is that we may be losing some articulation and warmth from the voice in general. So obviously, you're sacrificing, texture of the sound over, just practicality as far as not having a podcast or, bad audio, right? So that's going to be the trade-off there. I'm going to remove this so we can kind of hear the difference between windscreen on and windscreen off again. All right, and this is windscreen off, obviously. I'm going to listen to these two, watch these videos, and then for the last video, I'll be able to kind of give my thoughts watching all of this stuff. Obviously, my voice is a little nasally. I'm still getting better. Not 100% better, but like 95%. So now let's switch over to the XLR. We're going to switch to the XLR version of the mic, see how that sounds. All right, guys, so now we got the XLR version of the microphone. I have it plugged into the Maono Studio Pro Lite, or Maono Pro Studio Lite is the name of the audio interface. This is one I've featured on the channel before, so we have it plugged into that. And yeah, so this microphone for the dial here, the gain dial works digital via USB. And it actually works analog as well. So once again, if I turn it all the way down, so you're able to control your gain from the mic, and that actually is kind of useful, right? Especially if you have maybe a setup that isn't the most convenient to change knobs and things like that. And if someone says, "Hey, you sound kind of low, can you turn up?" You can just use the dial to turn up on the microphone itself and say, "Hey, how is that?" So that is very convenient, actually. We got the mute button as well. So the mute button works as well. So that is very useful, actually. So I would say I feel like this is more so of a microphone that's built for XLR, because it seems like these features are more catered for XLR. This isn't really a microphone where I would say they thought about the USB features of the mics. For example, not being able to hear yourself. There's no monitoring on the headphones. Obviously, one and the same, I guess, right? So, and then as far as for this, not being able to, you can control the audio, right? But, that's the only function either is for that. Yeah, so this seems like it was definitely designed more so for someone using XLR. I sometimes I can be a snob and prefer XLR. Actually, I always think the analog voice is going to sound better than the digital one, but obviously there is conveniences when you have just your mic and XLR, especially for traveling. I don't have time to bring my audio interface and all that stuff. I don't have space for it. I just need to have good audio if I'm traveling. Obviously, that's where USB comes in. So now I'm going to listen to all of this stuff, and then the last snippet of the video, I'll be able to give my take on this to see if this is something that I would recommend to get. So I'm going to listen to everything, and then I'm going to give my final thoughts. All right, guys. So we're at the end of the video here. I did manage to take a look at everything. I am speaking into this via the XLR function, and I have the windscreen on it just to help with the plosives, just to kind of cue your guys' ears from all the plosives into the video. I apologize about all of that. After hearing the audio, I'm like, oh my goodness. So my notes on this microphone, right? To me, it seems like this is best with an audio interface. XLR is really the main design of this microphone. The USB is kind of like in a pinch if you obviously you didn't get to bring your interface and you have to use USB-C, you can. I didn't hear too much of the ground loop issue, but that could be something where, if you have a lot of different, say, electronics around, that could create a ground loop, potential issue. Typically it's like if a phone goes off and it's near the microphone, it could cause some static or things like that. So I didn't hear a whole lot of super loud ground loop humming or hissing. You guys let me know. But I think this is a microphone best in the studio or with an audio interface. I think you're going to get the best out of the microphone. The capsule is really interesting. I almost thought it was a supercardioid microphone because slightly when I'm speaking away from it, you're really losing a lot of the sound from my voice, and that is beneficial if you're in an environment where it's maybe not the quietest and you kind of cut some of that sound in the background. Microphone's obviously great for that. That's one of the beauties of dynamic microphones. But then on the other side of the spectrum, you have to have really good microphone technique. Because if you give this microphone to, say, a guest or something like that for a podcast and they don't have the best of microphone technique, you could be losing their voice, i.e., you might have to do a lot of editing and post just to hear them, right? So I have this stupid windscreen on here. While I don't like the look of it, it is doing what a windscreen should do. It helps against plosive rejection. It's not the most attractive thing. Like taking this mic off, the windscreen off, like one of the benefits is like this mic looks cool. Like it's a nice looking mic, right? But you have to have really, really good microphone technique to get a good sound out of the mic and then to not get crazy plosives into the microphone itself, right? So this might be a slightly better microphone technique. You guys let me know. But if in doubt, just put the darn windscreen on. It's not going to be the most attractive thing to look at when you're seeing a visual podcast, but main thing for podcasts is that they want good audio, right? Audio is really the king. So, i.e. podcasts, before visual podcasts. So you're probably better off just using the windscreen. But I just wanted to demonstrate, you're kind of missing the design of this, so I kind of wish that there was a little more, filling inside behind the grill of the microphone to help against plosive rejection, because I think the style of the microphone is nice, right? It does come with that desktop mount. I personally don't recommend the desktop mount just because, tapping on it, it's going to catch all into the microphone, even though it's a dynamic microphone, the slightest movement, and that's most microphones, it's not just this, most microphones, not all of them, you're going to hear all that stuff into the mic. It's just, the game of audio, it's just, that's just kind of how it is, really. So I would not recommend the desktop mount of using that. Put it on a boom arm. And even though in a boom arm you're hearing all this, right? But you can still control where you're at, right? I'm sitting away, like a certain space next to the desk. I'm not hitting the desk or anything as I'm talking. I'm cognizant of that, so you can at least control your space. A little harder for you to control your space when you have the desktop on there, because everything is going to vibrate into the microphone. A shock amount ideally should help with that, but just in my years of using microphones, it's just really hard to kind of mitigate that without just stand away from wherever the microphone would be on a desk mount or what have you. So that's all I have there. So what I recommend this, I think for $34.87, I think this sounds very good. I think it sounds very good for that. If you are using an audio interface, absolutely. If you prefer to use USB, I think there's better options out there. I think for $10 more, $20 more, FiFine has some really good options for USB microphones that I think sound better than the USB on this. The USB on this is a little darker. While there is a neodymium magnet, or they say that it does, it doesn't sound like it. The curvature of the frequency of this microphone doesn't really seem like has like a presence boost that you would imagine from a neodymium magnet, like a RE320, the Electrovoice RE320. You really hear that neodymium magnet because it's a very bright sound. This not so much. So I think like the FiFine microphones are like $87, $60 that are USB. I think they're going to sound a lot better than this microphone personally. But I think for $34.87, this is pretty solid, especially when it comes to XLR, not breaking the bank. I mean, you can get two of these guys under $100 with the windscreens. I mean, that's a pretty decent quality for a podcast, so something to think about. For podcasting with another person, it's not bad. So anyway, I will leave it there. But again, Test This Tech. Catch you guys next video. Thanks a lot for watching.